Welcome to our channel, where we unravel the captivating lives of history's most intriguing figures. Today, we dive into the extraordinary story of Baroness Nica Rothschild, a woman who broke free from the chains of high society to live life on her own terms. From her gilded upbringing in one of the world's wealthiest families, to her rebellious journey as a patron of jazz and a fearless advocate for freedom, Nica's life was a whirlwind of scandal, passion, and resilience. Have you ever felt trapped by expectations, longing to break free and follow your own path? Baroness Nica Rothschild, born into one of the world's most powerful families, faced this dilemma from an early age. Her journey from the rigid confines of privilege to becoming a legendary muse of the jazz world is nothing short of extraordinary. Born Kathleen Annie Panonica Rothschild on December 10, 1913, Nica's life began in opulence. As the daughter of Charles and Nica Rothschild, she was part of a dynasty that symbolized wealth and power. Yet even in a world of unimaginable privilege, the weight of tradition loomed heavily over her. Her parents, already blessed with several children, longed for a son to secure the family legacy. When Nica arrived, they masked their disappointment by naming her after a butterfly, a poetic gesture, though she later admitted it was just a stylish moth. Nica's childhood was a blend of wonder and confinement. Imagine growing up in a home that resembled a living museum, with exotic animals like giraffes, kangaroos, and even a giant tortoise roaming the grounds. Her uncle's love of natural specimens turned their estate into a spectacle, a source of fascination for the young Nica. Yet, despite the exotic surroundings, her daily life was far from free-spirited. Strict routines governed her weekdays: plain meals, pristine white dresses, and no room for spontaneous joy. Only on weekends, when her father returned home, did Nica taste a sense of adventure. Her father, Charles, was a man of depth and passion, introducing her to music and nature during their treasured outings. However, his own struggles with depression cast a shadow over their family. After a battle with the Spanish flu, his mental health deteriorated further, and in 1923, he tragically took his own life. Nica, just 9 years old, was left with a profound lesson: the importance of staying true to oneself, no matter the cost. This loss would echo throughout her life, shaping her fierce independence and defiance of societal norms. As Nica Rothschild stepped into her teenage years, her defiance of societal norms became more than just a quiet rebellion. It was a full-blown declaration of independence. In the attic of her family's grand estate, she found a sanctuary where she could express herself freely. These secret jazz parties weren't just about sneaking friends in and enjoying forbidden music. They were a symbol of her refusal to be molded by the rigid expectations of her aristocratic world. For Nica, jazz wasn't just a genre, it was a lifeline, a vibrant, raw, and unrestrained form of expression that resonated with the deepest parts of her soul. These gatherings weren't just social events, they were acts of rebellion, a statement that she would not let her life be dictated by the constraints of wealth and tradition. Jazz, with its improvisation and unapologetic energy, mirrored the freedom she longed for in her own life. But Nica's mother, Rosica, saw these acts of independence as alarming signs of a daughter straying too far from the Rothschild image. Determined to rein her in, Rosica made a bold move. She sent Nica to a finishing school in Paris. This was no ordinary school. It was a polished institution designed to transform young women into the perfect embodiments of high society. Here, Nica was meant to learn the art of etiquette, master the subtle dance of social graces, and prepare for a life of aristocratic decorum. Yet, the reality of the school was far from the lofty ideals it promised. Run by eccentric mistresses, the institution offered little substance beneath its polished exterior. Lessons focused on superficial skills, how to apply makeup flawlessly, how to sit and walk like a lady, and how to fend off unwelcome advances. For someone as vibrant and curious as Nica, this environment was stifling, almost comical in its emptiness. She didn't need lessons in charm. She already possessed that naturally. What she craved was depth, meaning, and freedom. Instead of suppressing her rebellious streak, the finishing school experience only fueled it further. Nica saw through the charade and grew even more determined to carve out a life on her terms. Paris, however, wasn't a total loss. The city's vibrant energy and rich cultural scene left an indelible mark on her. Outside the rigid walls of the school, Paris was alive with creativity and bold ideas. Nica soaked it all in, further cementing her love for art, music, and freedom of expression. Her time in Paris also offered her glimpses of a larger world, one where people weren't bound by the same stifling rules that governed her aristocratic upbringing. She began to see the possibilities that lay beyond the Rothschild name, realizing that her destiny didn't have to be confined to hosting grand dinners or upholding family traditions. Paris, with its contrasts of elegance and rebellion, became a stepping stone in her journey toward a more liberated life. By the time she returned home, Nica was no longer the same young girl who had reluctantly left. She had tasted independence, however fleeting, and there was no turning back. This phase of her life wasn't just about defiance. It was about discovery of her passions, her values, and the kind of life she truly wanted to live. What do you think of Nica's transformation during her teenage years? Was Paris a blessing in disguise, or did it only intensify her desire to rebel? After her time in Paris, Nica embarked on a European tour with her sister, Liberty. Together they navigated the dazzling social circles of Europe, attending lavish parties and embracing their youthful freedom. Yet even in moments of joy, Nica couldn't escape the challenges of her family's name. In Vienna, a scheming countess falsely announced her engagement to her son, hoping to secure a share of the Rothschild fortune. The scandal was swiftly shut down by Rosica, who published a sharp rebuttal, but the incident highlighted the constant scrutiny and manipulation Nica faced. Amid the glittering highs and turbulent lows of Nica Rothschild's early years, one relationship stood out as a pillar of strength and inspiration: her bond with her brother Victor. In a family known for its opulence and formality, Victor offered Nica a connection grounded in shared passions and mutual understanding. Together, they discovered the transformative power of music, adventure, and the freedom that came with exploring the world beyond their family's constraints. Victor wasn't just a sibling, he was a mentor and a co-conspirator in Nica's journey toward independence. Recognizing her love for music, he introduced her to jazz lessons with the iconic pianist Teddy Wilson. These sessions weren't merely about learning technique, they were windows into a world of improvisation and self-expression, worlds apart from the rigid, rehearsed life expected of a Rothschild. Jazz became more than music for Nica. It was a declaration of freedom, a bold statement of individuality. But Victor's influence didn't stop there. He saw the adventurous spark in his sister and encouraged it, teaching her to drive and gifting her a sense of control and autonomy that was rare for women of her time. Not content with the ordinary, Victor even inspired her to take flying lessons with saxophonist and aviator Bob Wise. For a young woman confined by societal expectations, the experience of piloting an aircraft was nothing short of revolutionary. The sky, after all, held no boundaries, and neither, it seemed, did Nica's ambitions. These shared experiences were more than hobbies. They were acts of rebellion against the restrictive norms of their privileged upbringing. For Nica, every jazz lesson, every mile driven, and every flight taken was a step closer to the independence she yearned for. Victor wasn't just helping her acquire skills, he was helping her build the confidence to break free from the mold of her aristocratic world. Their bond also offered Nica a safe space to dream and explore without judgment. While the rest of the family may have viewed her growing independence with skepticism, Victor celebrated it. He saw in Nica the potential for something extraordinary, a life defined not by tradition, but by passion and purpose. Looking back, it's clear that Victor's support wasn't just instrumental in Nica's personal growth. It was a catalyst for the fearless, unconventional woman she would become. Through music, adventure, and an unshakable bond, he helped ignite the fire that would drive her to embrace a life of freedom, creativity, and endless possibilities. At just 21 years old, Nica Rothschild found herself swept up in the intoxicating whirlwind of first love. Jack Harris, a charismatic bandleader, was the embodiment of everything a young romantic could dream of: magnetic, talented, and utterly captivating. Their connection was electric, the kind of love that feels larger than life, and for a moment it seemed like Nica's world revolved around his charm and passion. Yet as thrilling as their romance was, fate had other plans for her. Jack, with all his charisma, was a fleeting chapter in her story. For a woman like Nica, whose life was destined to defy convention, even love couldn't keep her tethered. Her path was not to settle but to soar, and soon she would find herself stepping into a relationship that promised adventure, but with challenges she couldn't yet foresee. Little did she know this first taste of romance would be a precursor to the complexity and intensity of the life ahead. It wasn't just about love, it was about finding herself amidst the chaos of passion, duty, and the relentless pull of freedom. Finally, by 1935, Nica exchanged the thrilling unpredictability of Harris for Jules de Koenigswerder, a mining expert, aviator, and man of structure. Their marriage seemed like a fairy tale on the surface, blending two adventurous spirits, but beneath the glamour lay complexities that would soon unravel. Nica thought she was done with Jules, but Jules wasn't done with her. His relentless pursuit showed just how determined he was, and in the end, his persistence paid off. Nica finally accepted his proposal, and on October 15, 1935, they tied the knot. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale come true. A dashing aviator, a glamorous baroness, and a union that seemed destined for happiness. But as we're about to discover, for Nica, this was no fairy tale. It was the beginning of a story far closer to a nightmare. While in Beijing, the couple didn't just experiment with opium, they also crashed a plane and somehow survived. Stranded in a cockroach-infested motel, they managed to keep themselves alive on nothing but chocolate and booze. Talk about an unforgettable honeymoon, and the wildness didn't stop there. In Japan, Jules took things to another level, winning a sake drinking competition and proving that he wasn't just meticulous, but just as daring as his wife. The two even visited a rather unconventional toy shop, and as a prank, sent their family members some risque gifts that were sure to raise eyebrows. But not everything was fun and games. Jules was daring, yes, a man who could whisk Nica away in his airplane on spontaneous adventures, crash land in remote locales, and laugh about it later. But his adventurous streak came with an iron will. Jules was meticulous, a man who thrived on control and order, which clashed with Nica's free-spirited nature. As the years passed, the contrast between them became glaring. Jules's structured approach to life felt suffocating, especially for a woman who craved spontaneity and freedom. The couple settled into a sprawling mansion in Paris. complete with a 200-acre estate, staff, and all the trappings of wealth. On paper, it was the dream life, elegance, affluence, and status. But for Nica, it was a gilded cage. Motherhood, though a natural progression for many, felt like another set of chains. She loved her 2 children dearly, but the societal role of a mother and mistress of a grand estate didn't resonate with her true self. The lavish dinners, constant guests, and never-ending planning demanded by Jules left her feeling drained and unfulfilled. Caught up in the whirlwind of her new life, Nica had little time for politics. For a while, she managed to ignore the growing threat of Hitler and his forces, even as the Rothschild family became a prime target of Nazi anti-Semitic propaganda. It was a dangerous time, but Nica remained distanced from the political turmoil, at least for a while. That changed in 1939 when war erupted across Europe. Jules, ever the patriot, joined the army, but when France fell to the Nazis, he made a bold decision, resigning from his post to volunteer for the Free French Army, a resistance force fighting for liberation. It was a move rooted in courage and defiance, and one that would soon inspire Nica to take a similar stand. Ignoring the advice of friends and family, Nica made a bold and perilous decision. She chose to stay in France. But this wasn't just an act of defiance, it was an act of immense bravery. Determined to make a difference, she opened her doors to refugees fleeing the horrors of war. Within weeks, her home was filled with 60 evacuees, all seeking safety in the midst of chaos. Staying behind was both courageous and reckless. The risk was unimaginable, and the dangers became all too real when her own cousin narrowly escaped being captured by enemy forces after they seized her home. Nica's actions weren't just about survival. They were about standing up for humanity in one of its darkest hours. What do you think of her choice? Was it sheer bravery or a gamble too dangerous to take? Share your thoughts in the comments. Her war contributions didn't stop there. She took to the airwaves, broadcasting anti-Nazi propaganda and jazz records to boost morale. The defiance in her voice, the resolve in her actions, it all spoke of a woman unwilling to stand by as history unfolded. Nica wasn't just surviving the war, she was shaping her role in it, stepping beyond the shadows of her husband's decisions. Yet, as heroic and daring as their efforts during the war were, the cost was deeply personal. As the war intensified, Jules received chilling news. The German forces were closing in on Nica. Desperate to save his family, he urged her to flee with their children. But by the time the warning reached her, it was almost too late. Nica managed to secure visas for herself, the children, and a maid to escape to England. However, with commercial ships and flights no longer available, their options were grim. While she had the skills to pilot her own plane, finding enough fuel was impossible. Determined to protect her family, Nica made the bold decision to leave their home at the break of dawn, joining a stream of refugees on foot. After a grueling journey, they reached a crowded port and boarded an overcrowded ship bound for London. Their escape was nothing short of miraculous. Just 3 days after their departure, German forces arrived at Nica's French chateau. The family narrowly avoided a fate too dark to imagine, but the victory was bittersweet. While Nica and her children had made it to safety, not everyone in the family escaped. Tragically, Jules' mother refused to leave her home and met her end in Auschwitz, a devastating reminder of the war's relentless cruelty. The relentless shadow of danger loomed over Nica and Jules, testing not only their courage, but also the very foundation of their marriage. For Jules, the battlefield became his arena, a place where his sense of duty and discipline drove him to extraordinary lengths. But for Nica, the war brought a different kind of struggle, one that played out in the solitude of their home, far from the front lines. The separation was more than physical. As Jules poured himself into military campaigns, Nica faced the overwhelming weight of responsibility back home. She wasn't just tending to their estate or their children. She was opening their doors to refugees, offering sanctuary to those fleeing unimaginable horrors. In the quiet hours, she grappled with the moral complexities of her choices, knowing the risks she took could bring danger not just to herself, but to everyone under her roof. Determined to reunite with Jules and contribute to the fight for freedom, Nica made a bold choice. She sent her children to live with friends in Long Island and enlisted in the Free French Army. Her hope? To find Jules and support the cause she believed in. One of her first assignments was as a driver for General Koenig, a man famously disdainful of female drivers, long before he found himself at the mercy of Nica's infamous lead foot. When she begged to be deployed to Africa, where Jules was fighting alongside the Allies, her request was flatly denied. But Nica wasn't one to take no for an answer. She found a berth on a Norwegian freighter and hitched her way to West Africa. Her time in the war zone was as perilous as it was relentless. Within weeks of arriving at the camp, Nica battled malaria, endured severe sunstroke, and narrowly survived a car accident. Despite the hardships, she finally reunited with Jules and quickly made herself indispensable. She worked as a decoder, a driver, and even hosted a radio program where she broadcast jazz and anti-Nazi propaganda. Rumors swirled that she also piloted a Lancaster bomber, an easy story to believe, even without evidence. Jules and Nica took advantage of being one of the few married couples in the Army, but their relationship wasn't without its challenges. Whispers followed Nica wherever she went, claiming that her independent streak often led her astray. While Jules was fighting in Tunis, stories emerged of Nica seducing a musician who had followed the sound of jazz to her hotel room in Cairo. Back in Paris, her home became a refuge for servicemen, and one soldier even claimed to have been a witness to her romantic encounter with an officer. For Jules, the war ended with great honor. He was awarded the Ordre de la Libération, France's second highest distinction for heroes of the French liberation. Nica's contributions to the war effort, though quieter than Jules's, were no less significant. She wasn't just a figure of support, she was a woman of action, broadcasting anti-Nazi propaganda, providing refuge, and stepping into roles that few would dare to take. But in doing so, she began to carve out a sense of independence that diverged from her husband's rigid worldview. This period revealed a stark contrast between them. Jules thrived in the structured chaos of war, but Nica's battle was deeply emotional and personal. The strain of constant uncertainty, the unrelenting fear for loved ones, and the weight of moral decisions took a toll on her spirit. What had once been a partnership of daring adventures now felt like two lives moving on parallel but increasingly separate paths. By the end of the war, the toll on their relationship was undeniable. The exhilarating partnership that had once bonded them was now fraught with unspoken tensions and unbridgeable gaps. The resilience and sacrifice they had both shown were heroic, but they also revealed fundamental differences in how they approached life and love. The war didn't just test her courage, it reshaped her identity. She emerged from it not just as a survivor, but as a woman who had begun to redefine her purpose, guided not by societal expectations or marital obligations, but by her own evolving sense of self. For Nica, these years of marriage and motherhood were a paradox. They brought profound challenges, but also sparked a sense of purpose that transcended the expectations placed upon her. She found her strength not in conforming, but in carving her path, even as the world around her crumbled. However, after the war, Nica Rothschild found herself once again tethered to the confines of a structured life. She had tested her mettle during the chaos of World War II and emerged stronger and more confident. But when the dust settled, she returned home to a life dictated by Jules's controlling schedule. While they managed to find harmony enough to welcome 3 more children, Barrett, Sean, and Carrie, the scars of the war left their finances strained. Jules found work as an ambassador, and his posting to Mexico would unknowingly set the stage for a profound transformation in Nica's life. In Mexico, Nica stepped into the role of a diplomat's wife. It was a far cry from her daring war efforts, but one fateful call changed everything. A friend invited her to listen to Duke Ellington's Black, Brown, and Beige, a symphony described as a parallel to the history of Black Americans. The music spoke to her soul in a way nothing else had. In that moment, Nica felt a deep awakening. It wasn't just about the notes or the rhythm, it was the meaning behind the music, the raw emotion and history it carried. For the first time, she realized with absolute clarity she belonged to the world of music. It was a calling, a purpose she could no longer ignore. But what did it mean to answer that call? How could she reconcile her life as a diplomat's wife with the pull of a world so different from the one she inhabited? The question lingered, but one thing was certain. Her life was about to change forever. If Duke Ellington's music gave Nica Rothschild life, the work of another artist gave her a reason to live. On her way home from a trip to New York, Nica stopped by the house of her old friend, Teddy Wilson. What she heard there would change everything. Teddy played her Thelonious Monk's debut record, Round Midnight, and Nica was completely blown away. Monk's music hit Nica in a way nothing else had. It was raw, emotional, and exactly what she needed at that moment. She listened to the track 20 times in a row, so captivated that she missed her flight. At that moment, everything else, her husband, her children, her life of privilege, seemed to fade into the background. Monk became her new obsession, and she was determined to find him, no matter what it took. Bebop, the style of jazz Monk was pioneering, wasn't music you could dance or sing along to. It was rebellious, complex, and deeply passionate, much like Nica herself. She didn't just embrace the music, she dove headfirst into the culture, learning everything she could about the close-knit circle of musicians who lived and breathed bebop. Soon, she became a part of that world. Known simply as the Baroness, Nica was more than just a supporter. She was a lifeline for many artists. She helped struggling musicians retrieve pawned instruments, drove them to gigs in her luxury cars, and even helped pay their rent. Her generosity earned her a place of respect and affection in the jazz community. But despite her growing influence, there was still no sign of the man whose music had ignited this transformation. Monk remained elusive, and her search for him became a metaphor for her own quest for meaning and purpose. Meanwhile, her husband Jules seemed to have disappeared entirely from her thoughts, a distant figure overshadowed by her new world. Scandals and rebellion became almost synonymous with the name Nica Rothschild. As she broke away from the rigid constraints of an aristocratic life to embrace the world of jazz, a world as vibrant and unpredictable as she was. Leaving her family behind, Nica moved to the Stanhope Hotel in New York, an unconventional choice for someone of her status. But for Nica, it was a place where she could fully immerse herself in the jazz scene. Her lifestyle quickly became a topic of controversy. The Stanhope, a symbol of exclusivity, was suddenly hosting jam sessions and musicians from all walks of life in her suite. Nica, with her leopard print fur coats and unapologetic demeanor, shattered the image of the reserved Baroness. Her commitment to the jazz world wasn't just superficial, it was deeply personal. She became a patron, a friend, and a savior to many musicians, providing financial support, paying rent, and even driving them to gigs in her Rolls-Royce. But her close association with jazz's rebellious energy often put her in the crosshairs of public scrutiny. One of the most infamous incidents in Nica's life occurred in 1958 in a racially charged confrontation involving Thelonious Monk. While traveling together, they stopped at a motel in the segregated South where Monk was arrested and brutally beaten by police. When authorities discovered marijuana in their car, Nica immediately claimed it was hers, a selfless act that risked her freedom to protect Monk. The scandal that followed dominated headlines, painting Nica as both a troublemaker and a controversial champion of the marginalized. Despite the harsh judgments she faced from society and her peers, Nica never wavered in her loyalty to the jazz community. She wasn't just a bystander, she was an active participant in their struggles and triumphs. Her suite at the Stanhope became a haven for musicians, a place where creativity thrived, and the pressures of the outside world momentarily melted away. Nica Rothschild's life was a testament to the power of rebellion, not for the sake of chaos, but for the sake of passion and purpose. Her connection to jazz wasn't just about music. It was about finding a world where she could truly belong, no matter how much controversy it stirred. Nica Rothschild's relationship with Thelonious Monk was as profound as it was unconventional. Their connection ran deep, yet it was entirely platonic, a friendship built on mutual respect, shared passion for music, and unwavering support. Monk, a genius in jazz but a man often tormented by mental health struggles, found in Nica a steadfast ally. She wasn't just a friend, she was a lifeline, stepping in during his most difficult moments. Whether it was calming him during a mental health crisis or advocating for him in an unforgiving world, Nica was there. Far from feeling threatened, Monk's wife, Nellie, appreciated Nica's presence. They shared the responsibility of caring for Monk, forming a unique partnership rooted in love and understanding. Together, they worked to provide stability in a life often marked by chaos. Despite the strictly platonic nature of her relationship with Thelonious Monk, Nica Rothschild couldn't escape the whispers and speculation that seemed to follow her everywhere. Rumors swirled, painting her as a figure of intrigue in the tightly knit jazz world. But for Nica, none of that mattered. She never allowed gossip or judgment to shake her resolve or cloud her purpose. She wasn't there to please the critics or conform to societal expectations. She was there to make a difference. Nica's generosity extended far beyond her friendship with Monk. She became a lifeline for countless musicians, helping with rent, recovering instruments from pawn shops, and providing encouragement at times when hope was hard to find. Nica's relationship with Monk became a symbol of her dedication to jazz and the people who created it. It wasn't about romance, it was about connection, creativity, and an unshakable commitment to the art and the artists she loved. On October 15, 1958, Nica Rothschild, Thelonious Monk, and musician Charlie Rouse were driving to a performance in Baltimore when Monk asked Nica to stop so he could use a restroom. In the racially segregated South, finding a welcoming place was no easy task. After a long search, they finally spotted a motel with a sign that read, "All welcome." Monk went inside while Nica and Charlie waited in the car. However, when Monk politely asked the desk clerk for a glass of water, she panicked and called the police. By the time Monk returned to the car, a patrol car had arrived. The officer demanded Monk step out, but he ignored the order, while Nica tried to explain who he was. She thought the misunderstanding would soon be cleared up. She was completely wrong. More police officers arrived, and what followed was horrifying. They dragged Monk out of the car and beat him until he was unconscious. Nica pleaded with them to stop, begging them to be careful of Monk's hands, his livelihood, his gift. The violence didn't end there. After the assault, the police conducted a search of the car, but only after Nica demanded to know what charges they were facing. They found marijuana, and Nica immediately claimed it was hers. Her selfless act was an attempt to shield Monk from further persecution, but it came at a steep cost. On April 21, 1959, a judge fined Nica $3,000 and sentenced her to 3 years in prison, followed by deportation. The situation seemed dire, but Nica's family stepped in. They hired a lawyer to appeal the decision, and her brother Victor posted bail. For 2 long years, the threat of prison and exile loomed over her. Finally, a judge dismissed the case on a technicality, ruling that the officers had failed to follow proper search procedures. Nica had faced the full weight of a system rigged against her, but her resilience and loyalty to Monk never wavered. This infamous night wasn't just about a clash with authority. It was a moment that revealed Nica's unwavering courage and dedication to those she cared about. Even as the years passed, Nica Rothschild stayed true to her unconventional spirit. Her home, a lively sanctuary filled with her cherished cats, reflected the free-spirited energy that had defined her life. Music remained her guiding passion, and she continued to immerse herself in the jazz world, supporting the art and the artists she loved. One of her notable contributions was her collaboration on Clint Eastwood's Bird, a biopic about Charlie Parker. True to form, Nica ensured that the film authentically captured the essence of jazz, a testament to her unwavering dedication to the music that shaped her life. In November 1988, Nica Rothschild underwent triple coronary bypass surgery, holding on to hope for a full recovery. But after 74 years of a life lived on her own terms, marked by daring adventures, a few car crashes, and even a brief battle with cancer, her resilient heart finally gave out. True to her poetic nature, Nica left behind a will that reflected the woman she had been. She requested her family to cremate her remains, hire a boat, and scatter her ashes over the Hudson River. Her instructions were as specific as they were meaningful. The ceremony was to take place around midnight. This final act wasn't just a farewell. It was a tribute to her favorite Thelonious Monk composition, Round Midnight, and a symbolic gesture encapsulating the passion, independence, and artistry that defined her remarkable life. Her final wish wasn't just about her love for music. It was a statement of who she was, a woman who lived unapologetically, loved fiercely, and always followed her own rhythm. She challenged norms, shattered expectations, and left an indelible mark on the world of jazz and beyond. Her fearless spirit and unwavering loyalty to the people she loved make her legacy truly unforgettable. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the life of the Wild Baroness Rothschild, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.